Hello and welcome to.
Hello.
That was just very much. Do you remember the old hello and welcome to movie phone?
Yes. Yes.
That was my take on hello and welcome to movie phone.
It
This is
was
hello and welcome to
terrific.
KTVG Studio. And today we are going to take you on a wild ride, as Katie put it a little bit earlier, through
Topsy-turvy.
through holidays. Now I think she's got a longer spectrum one to take you through. I'm going to start us out with just talking about what is the purpose of these things to start with? Like
Yeah.
why do we even look at or have them kind of thing?
Mhm.
So, one of the aspects of it is that they create social bonds by bringing people together in shared rituals. It could be meals, it could be a celebration of some sort, but they increase feelings of belonging and positive mood. So, these are part of the core social functions of holidays. So, we're going to touch on a number of them, but probably some that are a little bit less of our like familial ones. But let's keep going.
Yeah.
They mark sacred and special time, offering a break from everyday life and giving space for reflection, joy, or mourning. Or in late stage capitalist countries, they just offer people a moment of rest. Okay, that was my um, editorializing. Anyways, they transmit values and stories about ancestors, faith, or the nation, teaching what a community considers important. One more, they reinforce group identity, whether that be religious, ethnic, or national, and they help people feel part of something larger than themselves. So that's normally how most of these come to be about. We could get into the specificity of whether it's religious or ethnic or national, but for right now, we're going to skip over that. We'll maybe touch on that a little bit when we talk about the holidays. Individual and psychological roles is the other part that I wanted to hit on, is
Mm.
that they provide rest and reset points in the year, which can support
Mhm.
well being and work life balance. Participation in holiday rituals, religious or secular, tend to increase positive emotions and feelings of connection to others, and they help individuals locate personal life events within a larger cultural or sacred timeline. So I really wanted to um, ground our discussion just a little bit in terms of like, okay, what are we getting out of even having these holidays? Why would we have holidays from ancient times making it through to now? Like
Mhm.
what is it about them? Because we do come up and develop new holidays. Um,
Yep.
but in the modern era, I feel like sometimes if there isn't a sale, I should say a modern era and late stage capitalism, if there isn't a sales point to it, it feels, at least to me, a little like we don't inculcate or bring it in to the cultural zeitgeist, really. And the one I'm thinking of, which to me at least is one of the most recent ones that has been put forth nationally, which was Martin Luther King Day, which I think has amazing significance
Mhm.
beyond just the gentleman himself it's meant to honor, but the whole civil rights movement.
Mhm.
But it feels very fragmented to me. And it could
Mm.
be that it came across at a time when most people just look at any day off as just, "Oh my god, I get a day off." Um, but I feel also like the marketing folks have tried to figure out how they sell it. Maybe it's books or maybe it's a T-shirt, but they haven't quite figured out, it's not really a card holiday. Um,
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's the problem. There's no activity, as you say, grounding that day, right?
well, having been part of activist movements in New York City, they do a number of activities in that day. But what I found was maybe it's the fragmentary nature of our society right now. It was a very decided group of people who took part.
Mm.
And they weren't just African Americans, but they were people already actively involved a lot of times in the activist movement. It felt less so. Now, I'm not saying this isn't the case. There could very well be people who are not involved on a regular basis who go out and do something in service. But I loved the concept that these activist groups that we're talking about, which was that the people of the civil rights movement, with Martin Luther King Jr. as like the image of that, were doing service to our nation, to our society, at a detriment, at a loss for themselves in a lot of ways. And that the least we could do on a holiday commemorating that is acts of service. So I have heard that, but to your point, Katie, it doesn't feel as if it is a universal thought or a universal presentation even.
You know what I think?
Well,
This is my theory. And I'm not trying to belittle the holiday because I think it's great to have that holiday. But I wonder all the holidays that people seem to love and hold to their heart have food in it. And I wonder if they should be thinking of attaching some kind of a food item or event or something to help cement it. Just putting it out there.
I like the idea. I mean, Southern
Mhm.
cuisine,
Everyone loves food.
yeah, it could totally work. The So I took us a little bit serious to start, but what sparked our conversation a little bit more is that we have St. Patrick's Day coming up. And I'll talk a
Mhm.
little bit more about its history in a minute. But what I was explaining to Katie in is that, especially when I lived in New York in my late 20s, all throughout my 30s, even to a certain extent into my 40s, there were certain holidays that were more than anything, they were friend holidays. So there are holidays that were family holidays, and there were holidays that were friend holidays. For example, Thanksgiving
Mm,
in the US was more so for me, because I lived close to family, a family holiday. It didn't mean
yeah,
that friends couldn't be involved. It didn't mean I never had a Friendsgiving. It just meant that it was a little bit more designated towards family. Like that
yeah,
time was set aside, and it had to be something was going on with family while you weren't, like taking part that way. But holidays such as Valentine's Day, which has gotten the moniker Galentine's Day, became a friend's holiday. But my first real friend's holiday was St. Patrick's Day.
mm,
None of the people that I was really hanging out with were of Irish descent, which in the US, it's also a cultural and ethnic celebration. But it was a great opportunity to get together with friends. And it it's not a national holiday in the US, so it wasn't like you got the day off. Um, but hanging out with friends. And literally, we just spent hours together. Yes, there was alcohol involved. I'm not a big drinker. I think we've discussed this before. I like my pint of Guinness. It was actually the first beer I liked. So I'm happy to have a pint of Guinness. But as our friend Anne would say, I'm a lightweight and a half pint is normally more than enough for me. But
and you fall asleep in like 10 minutes,
I would intersperse it with some caffeine.
and we have to wake you up with a Coca-Cola.
So, but it was hours, like, at Slade, like, hanging out, and on some days, depending on when St. Patrick's Day landed, we might go and watch the parade, though that wasn't even as big a thing. It was more about
Oh,
just being together with friends, like, planning a day that you were gonna meet up with friends, you had whatever the food was at the pub, you had your Guinness, and people hung out and talked, and that's what it was. And it
mhm,
was a day that you knew you were gonna get together with your friends.
yep,
Because at least for most of us, again, nobody within my that group was Irish or of Irish descent or particularly devout Catholic or religious in that way, that it was a day of something else,
do
like
Irish people celebrate it?
they do.
Mm.
In
I mean,
fact,
in Ireland.
they do. Now, through most of like it started out as religious, a Catholic religious holiday. And I think we talked before about how there's some thought of, um actually, I don't think we talked about them co-opting Bridget, but not necessarily
Yeah,
St. Patrick. I didn't look up who St. Patrick might be a celebration for, but it is early spring. It's near the
Mhm.
spring equinox, a little before. Um, but for most of, like, the time, especially that the English were in control, it was a celebration, a religious celebration, and that was
Mm.
well into like, it is a national holiday in Ireland, like, they have the day off,
Oh,
um,
okay.
but it wasn't until the late '90s when they really started doing, like, their tourist groups got involved.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
because the Americans, the Irish Americans, had made St. Patrick's Day such a cultural touch point, and, American capitalism will look for any way. It's a great day to sell. I mean, McDonald's sells Shamrock Shakes. You see an influx of Lucky Charms commercials. And, Guinness sells a hell of a lot of beer. So, I mean, Chicago turns their river green. New York has one of the biggest parades in the world on St. Patrick's Day. But for the US, I mean, Irish Americans, even at the when it became a country, and even after the potato famine, were now they're considered white, but they weren't considered white back in the day. So it was as much of it anything else, it was an ethnic holiday as well, a celebration of culture. And I'm not talking about the drinking and stuff, I'm talking about they came together. That's what the parade was about. It was about Irish pride. And so as the US, it got bigger and bigger and they found ways to sell it, when folks in Ireland were looking at, "Hey, maybe we could get some of these tourist dollars," they started making it mostly, I think, in the cities. So, like, if you went to Dublin or Cork or Galloway, um, they started making it like, why don't you come and spend St. Patrick's Day in Ireland,
Mm,
where it's a real
mhm.
holiday? Even though it wasn't the kind of thing that Americans celebrate at all. It was much more of a family event, and it was much more religious. Like, people normally attended mass. Like, that's what they did. I'm not saying that they didn't have food involved or other things, just saying that it had more of a religious connotation up until the '90s, and there may still be families that that's still the case for. Again, I'm doing top level research kind of based on something that Katie and I were talking about. But yeah, it is celebrated, and now, I mean, we're in the 2nd decade of the 21st century. I think it's and with the way that TV and movies have shared across places, especially when you have a language in common, I think there's a lot more of the type of celebrating you might see in the United States happening in Ireland. Though they're very clear about the fact that it's St. Patty's Day, not Patty, it's D.
Mhm.
And I saw something on Instagram. So I don't know that all of Ireland is here, but I do know that Ireland has stood with the Palestinians. And they're like, instead of turning your rivers green and doing a parade in honor of us, how about honor those who are even more being suppressed? Pull out your kaifa. And it really sparked something for me in terms of the fact that I'm
Mhm.
like, um, Ireland has often stood with the oppressed. And I think about the fact that the Irish Constitution, one of the people who helped write it was Puerto Rican. He was at Harvard with one of their major
Really?
independentists. Yeah, they were at Harvard
Wow.
Law School together, and our, like, father of independence, um, Albizu Campos, helped write the Irish Constitution.
Mm,
So, and there's a
interesting.
lot between the Palestinians, the Irish, and the Puerto Ricans. I wouldn't say all Puerto Ricans, but definitely those people who feel the oppression distinctly. There are some major connections.
Mm,
So,
interesting.
I keep trying to take us to a light place and end up in these much more serious moments. Maybe it's time for us to go on our voyage.
Which one is that?
Weren't you gonna take us on a trip
Yes, my
transfer trip?
voyage.
Yes.
Okay, hold on to your seats. This is
Oh,
pretty topsy-turvy. We're going to travel from ancient Rome through the Middle Ages to America And then we're going to have a little twist with Japan. And this is all around one topic, Valentine's Day. Okay, it is wacky. Okay, we'll start with the origins of Valentine's Day. I know we're way past Valentine's, but whatever. This is
We're talking
pretty fun.
holidays.
This,
I'm gonna bring
yeah,
us
exactly.
to Columbus and Thanksgiving later, so
All right. So originally, um, there was a Roman feast, ancient Roman feast called Lupercalia. I don't know how to say that. It was celebrated between the 13th and the 15th of Feb. And this is a little bit dark, but so men would sacrifice dogs and goats, and then they would whip or hit women with the skins. Okay. And
okay.
for fertility reasons. They thought this would help with fertility. No idea. And then there would also be like a hooking up aspect, sex and stuff like that. Great. Then, um, jumping a few centuries, we've got an Emperor Claudius II, and he executed two men, both named Valentine, which I find a little bit suspicious, very strange.
Were they related?
And they were, I don't know, but
Oh,
it was the martyrdom of Valentine.
Valentine.
Fine, what? Fine. Um, then we move forward a little bit, and then there's this pope called Gelasius the First. He kind of conflated Lupercalia and this Valentine martyrdom thing. Somehow he put it together, and then
I have
at
questions.
this,
Were the
yes,
Valentines martyred the same way?
no, 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 they were just killed. I don't know how they were killed,
Oh,
but they were
okay.
killed. It's
Sure.
not with flayed animal skins or something.
Okay.
It's just so weird. And then, so at the time, the Pope Gelasius, he kind of merged Lupercalia and martyrdom of the Valentines together. At the same time, off we go to the Normans in England, and they were celebrating something called Gallatin's Day, and it was essentially a lover of women. So it was like celebrating women, and everything got conflated. And then it became like a Valentine's Day, I guess, with all of these elements in smooshed into this concept of Valentine's Day. And it became popularized through the Middle Ages. Shakespeare talked about it, Chaucer talked about it. And then it became quite fashionable to have these handmade cards that and a little token that you'd give to a lady, men would give to a lady. Um, and then everything kind of then the New World and everything blew up in 1913. Kansas City Hallmark started producing mass produced Valentine's cards. And we have Valentine's as we know it. Now, here comes the twist. Japan. Not what you'd think of for Valentine's. Now, 1935, this was before the war. So there was this Russian-led chocolate company called Morozov. They had heard about Valentine's. And so they decided, let's try to market it here, in Japan. It didn't really work because Japanese people don't really eat chocolate. But so they tried
Except
to
Kit Kats.
market it hmm,
Except Kit Kats.
in 1935.
Not in 1935. I'm
No,
thinking
no.
now.
So this
They
is
seem to like Kit
1935.
Kats
No, this is different. But
now. Okay.
1935,
1935.
people are
Going back in time.
not eating chocolate. It's not a
Yes.
thing. So the it didn't work very well, but this Morozov were targeting expats. Fine, then there's the war. Now we come post-war, 1958. So there's this um, chocolate company called Mary's Chocolate Company. No idea why it's called that in Japan. whatever. In 1958, they decided that they were going to try this Valentine's thing. So there are obviously people eating chocolate if there are these chocolate companies there, right? So they tried to market it, chocolates for your sweetie or whatever. Didn't work, failed. No one bought anything. Next year, they tried again with personalized chocolates. So you could come and ask for your sweetheart's name to be put onto the chocolate, and then that worked. People like that. It was actually marketed toward women because the idea was because it's quite a patriarchal society. And so there is this concept called kokuhaku, which is a confession of love that men do to women. So the idea here was to make more modern society to target women in women's magazines and say, why don't you flip it? It's your opportunity, Valentine's Day, to give something to the guy you like. So it was kind of like sold, I guess, like a women's lib kind of thing, right? People liked it. So in Japan, it got flipped. It's a holiday for women to give chocolates to men. And it wasn't until the 70s that it really like took hold, but people liked it. People were doing it. And in the 70s, it got really strong because there was an influx of women into the workforce and they had money to spend. Today, it's really waning. I think you mentioned it too, like, it's geared more toward friends and family. Um, and there's a word for chocolates that you give to friends. It's tomochoko. So tomodachi is friend. So tomochoko. And even chocolates you give to yourself. And that's called
Ooh.
jibun choco because jibun means yourself. So it seems to be shifting away from sweethearts and whatever to more self-love and friends and
Friend.
family and stuff like that. Now, if that wasn't topsy-turvy enough, 1976, there was a candy company called Ishimura Manseido. An executive in the company had read an editorial by a woman. And she was complaining about Valentine's because she's like, I have to get the chocolates and the man doesn't do anything. There's no reciprocal action. So this candy company decided 1976 to create something called White Day. And they set it for March 14th. So exactly a month after Valentine's. And they created a white, like a marshmallow, and they put a chocolate in the middle of it. So it's an opportunity for men who receive the Valentines from a woman to give this marshmallow to the woman and say, I return the chocolate with my love or something goofy. So it was called Marshmallow Day. And actually, evidently, it spread to Taiwan, South Korea, China, and Vietnam. But now it's actually decreasing in popularity. So it's not as popular as it used to be. And I think also it's like um, you're kind of perpetuating these gender roles and gender stereotypes in a weird way, even though it's flipped, it's still doing that. So it seems like people nowadays are transcending that. But I found it to be quite a weird and wacky trip from like in ancient Rome, men killing animals and flaying women and you know, martyrdom of these Valentines, and then all of a sudden we've got Valentines. And then in Japan, they completely reversed it. I just thought it was so crazy.
Uh, it's interesting to me. There were a couple things that it made me think of. One was that in by 1935, it would have been the Soviet Union
Yes.
that was making this offer. And one of the things that I think about is the fact that as of 1917, with the Bolshevik Revolution, women in the Soviet Union had more rights than women in most of the Western world, or in what I imagine you're describing of even Japan at the time. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
like
Oh, yeah,
women
100%.
actually had so many more rights, and like equal pay was a thing. Like, I'm not saying that there weren't other cultural elements that didn't come into play, but um it and someday maybe we'll talk about this more, but it always makes me think also of just the former Soviet bloc and the women who then later, like the women who are our age, who like remember when the Berlin Wall fell and their experience having grown up under that regime and then coming to the West and thinking they'd be more free and finding themselves due to patriarchal standards um, and rules and regulations that still existed of feeling less free. So it makes me think of that one. And the other is the fact that they have the March 15th where the men need to give the women. I had a client, she was actually born in Russia, if I remember correctly. She was born in Russia, but she was of partial Korean descent. And she grew up there until she was like, I think, 8. But she still holds to Women's Day, where in Russia, they actually go and buy flowers and you give, and a lot of it's men, but it's not just men. Women will do this too. You give flowers to the women in your world in appreciation and acknowledgement of them. And I just found it fascinating that you had like a Russian company with the chocolate in Japan, and then you had Japan developing something, but it's like a week after Women's Day, like almost a week after Women's Day takes place. But okay. So I love the story, uh, not just the story, just the way that things transmute. Like you have all of these holidays for people, and they develop and they morph as culture changes, as history changes, as you have different influences coming
Mhm.
in and going out. Um, which I had mentioned I was going to take us to what in the U.S. was termed Columbus Day for the longest time, and
Yes.
Thanksgiving. And some of this was bringing us back to the indigenous people of the Americas and of the United States,
Mhm.
and the fact that there are places in the US now where what used to be termed Columbus Day is now called Indigenous Peoples Day. And there are a lot of people, whether they're in one of those places or not, that call it Indigenous Peoples Day. And part of this is acknowledging the fact that a recognition that when you really study the history of Columbus, pretty horrific, and that he didn't discover anything so much as get lost and get rescued by people who he stumbled across. Um, and I think that there's definitely been conversations within some of the Italian American community that had held him up as, oh, this is an ethnic cultural thing. I'm not hearing as much of that now. I don't know if that's just there's other
Oh, you
conversations
mean like
going on.
a pro what, like a pro
Yeah, the
Italy?
people who didn't want to get rid of Columbus Day because just like St. Patrick's Day was deemed an ethnic holiday for Irish Americans, Columbus Day had something similar going on for it at a time when Italians were not deemed the way they are now, white, when they were denigrated, when people would call them names, would not hire them based on their background. Um, having an honor of somebody who was purported to be, because there's still question about that, purported to be Italian, was sort of uplifting of the community. And I've actually heard some Italian Americans go, there's so many other Italian Americans we could uplift. Let's find another one. Like we can find another one. We do not have to uplift somebody who was the instigator of genocide, like
When did we start Columbus Day?
I don't know that. I actually did not look up the history. Let's see.
Hmm.
The first known Columbus Day celebration in what is now the United States was held October 12th, 1792 in New York City.
Wow, that is really quite early.
Yeah, it was held for the 300th anniversary. I don't know that it started out as a celebration of Italian heritage. So I wasn't trying to suggest that that's how it started. I was talking about it in terms of when people were having discussions about it being reclaimed as
Mm,
Indigenous
mhm.
Peoples Day, that there were
Yep.
people arguing back, but, you know, this was why we cared about it. It became a recurring national holiday by proclamation under President Franklin Roosevelt in 1937. So it definitely I don't know how well, Italians were still I mean, to this day, there's still a lot of negative stereotypes.
I'm gonna be honest, I did not know Columbus was Italian for a long time. I mean, obviously, I do, but it it's not something I think I don't remember hearing that when I was little. So, because you only think Spain, because
Mhm.
he was
La Nina,
working
la
for
Pinta y
them.
la Santa Maria.
But, like, I'm a little surprised that their Italian community is talk
So my
saying that because I don't think a lot of people know
Mhm.
he's Italian.
Well, I'm gonna finish
No
yeah,
offense.
it became an official federal holiday in 1971, so our entire lives. But I think my perspective on it is just I was living in New York City at the time that a lot of these discussions were going on, and so you have New York City has a large population of almost everyone, but they definitely have a large Italian American population. And I would not say it was everyone in any way, shape, or form. I would say most people were not maybe even involved in the discussion, but there were some people that I got to hear about who were talking about it in that way. And then other people of the same ethnic background going, we can uplift someone else. Like it wasn't even an argument necessarily between like the indigenous folks and the Italian Americans. It was Italian Americans because to your point, a lot of people have no idea that
Yeah,
Columbus was of Italian descent. Um,
yeah.
so, um, but I do have to say, I very much loved the concept of it being reclaimed as Indigenous Peoples Day. But like Martin Luther King, and to your point, Katie,
Food.
there's and there is food that could be associated with it. Now, I'm not as
Yes.
familiar with Indigenous people's food, but I have heard of fry bread. I'm imagining I think about, like, the Three Sisters, the squash and the beans,
Yes,
you
and
know, like
that flat wild rice thing, is that
yeah.
what we talked about before? I mean,
I think
easy.
that there are ways to associate it with food, and I think that that would
Yes,
be beautiful, and I think it'd be
yes.
amazing to have it be something that we truly do celebrate and uplift and, like, make it a point of it should be more than a day, but if at minimum of celebrating the people who are on this land.
Now here's a question for you. Do you like the term Indigenous Day?
I don't necessarily know, but I know that what I have heard is most of the people who were here prefer the term that they use for themselves, but there were so many different groups, so many different tribes and communities and nations that um, I have heard from some that they actually, though it is inaccurate to call them Indian, they preferred American Indian because it was the only one of the like when you say Puerto Rican American or Irish American or Italian American, the other went first. And I guess American Indigenous might be the term.
I'm just asking because I know there's a bit of issue of some groups don't like the term indigenous for their
Mhm.
whatever, their reasons. So I'm just curious, is this official? This Indigenous Day?
I believe in
Sorry
some
for my
cities,
ignorance.
I think in some cities, I believe Seattle is one of the cities that has Indigenous Peoples Day as a holiday.
Oh, Indigenous
So,
Peoples
and
Day.
again, they're renaming a federal holiday. So
Mm,
federally, it is not called that. It would be, I believe there are certain cities where the holiday has been renamed. Again, I didn't do a thorough, some of this is coming from my memory from when these conversations were going on a good 10, 15 years ago.
mm,
Um, but I do know there are some places that have passed it. I don't know if there are any states that have, but I do know there were cities that had.
mm,
Um, but it also makes me think like in this nation, the United States, Thanksgiving is one of the most universal, technically universal holidays. But for a lot of the native people,
mm,
it is a
yes,
reminder of the start of genocide. And so it's a day of mourning for some, for as much as
yes,
it is a family sort of holiday for others. So, and there is food associated with that one.
yes.
Um,
That's why it's
you
so
know,
popular. Think
but
my theory holds.
I think your theory does hold. I do think, though, just as I think we need to remember the Holocaust that occurred in Europe, I think there are also things that we need to remember that happened here, and that I mean, there's parts of this country where they don't even get taught about it. Like, I mean, I was in a place where we were for high school in Washington State, where we were required to take, Pacific Northwest, I can't remember what it was, Pacific Northwest history, but a good portion of it was actually learning about the people who were living there at the time that others came in to colonize. And as part of my American history, I learned of the Trail of Tears, but I never really learned very much about the Choctaw or the Cherokee. I learned about their pain, and I learned what our country, we had done to them, but I didn't learn about them as much, it felt like. And I would love to see if we are going to commemorate or talk about these things that we don't just learn about the pain of people, but we celebrate their resilience and we celebrate their culture and we celebrate them. Like, I'd love to see us start to do that as we move forward. Um, some of that makes me think of, I know that, again, we're recording this, the Oscars happened last night. I didn't watch. But one of the things that often gets to me is that when you see I'd say non-white or non-Western stories that win, so often are ones that center around the pain of folks that are still deemed other by those in power of that industry.
Hmm.
And I think one of the most striking examples is, it's things that take part of the slave narrative that have most often won awards. The first African American woman to win an Oscar, Hattie McDaniel, wasn't even allowed to sit with the the other people that she acted with in it. She won an Oscar, and she had to be segregated from the rest of the cast. Um, that may not be the case today, but I still feel like there's a lot that we have to address, change, embrace even, for us to be able to move forward. So when I'm thinking about these holidays, I love the fact that we see them morphing into things about friends and self-care and, I think that's beautiful. I like the fact that people are looking at how do we take something that's existed and how do we make it something that is honoring what we are more aware of now. I just like to see the next step where it's, to your point, I don't know, what were Martin Luther King's favorite foods? What were Malcolm X's,
I'm telling you, we gotta get food to anchor these things. I think people
Yeah.
would pay attention. more.
food and music
Mm.
and, you know, like, um, yeah, I'd love to see some more of that, some more of the celebration of the joy. I think it's one of the reasons that look, Puerto Rico before Bad Bunny, I don't really feel like I feel like he's put Puerto Rico under a magnifying glass just because so
Mm.
many more people are learning about the culture. Like, if you didn't live in a center with a lot of them or you didn't have friends, there are people in the United States who have met who have no idea where the island is. They less likely to know that it is part of the United States or that it was colonized by the
Oh,
United States.
oh, let me tell you 1 second. So I used to live in Hawaii, and I had to call T-Mobile for something, and I called, um, and I was like, I just want a cell phone. This is this was not even, I mean, this was what, 19, no,
2000 something.
2006.
Yeah.
And I was talking to this customer service rep, and I was explaining where I live. I said, "I'm in Honolulu, on Oahu." And she was like, "Oh, we don't service international." And I was just like, Hawaii is a state. And it was just like, come on. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
understand.
So that just reinforces Hawaii is an actual state. Bad Bunny actually has a song about let's not have happen to us, talking about Puerto Rico, what happened to Hawaii. Um,
What's that? To be a state?
yeah, just because the people native to Hawaii, the Hawaiians, have been in communication because little history. The United States started taking over Hawaii at the same time it was taking over Puerto Rico. The sugar barons wanted to make money. So they offered people whose money had been devalued in Puerto Rico the chance for work on another island. Most of these people were not explained that this island was on the other side of the world. So I don't know exactly how many, but there were hundreds that were taken to the other side of the world to show the people in Hawaii how to plant sugarcane and pineapple and I'm not even quite sure what else, but it was a big part of it. So you have this huge group of Puerto Ricans over there. They've been in conversation since the turn of the last century. So previous to this one. Um, so people in Hawaii have been telling people in Puerto Rico it doesn't necessarily get better because you're a state and you have the potential. You guys have held on to your culture. You've held on to a language that's different. You have the potential of losing that in a way that they keep trying to make us do and have succeeded in a lot of ways. So that's, I don't know that the song necessarily gets that deep, but I know that that's part of what they're referring to. And, but what I wanted to highlight that I love about Bad Bunny putting this magnifying glass on is I love it that he's doing it in a way that it's as much about Puerto Rican joy as it is still acknowledging the colonial history, still acknowledging the difficulty of being a territory that is practically not acknowledged. Like he doesn't he uplifts the joy
Mhm, mhm.
without negating the difficulty. And I guess I'd love to see more of that example. It's something
Yeah,
I very much admire about him.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is a bit of our story. I think, okay, other holidays that are friend, especially when you don't have children, is Halloween.
Is it?
At least it was for
What
me.
what do people do? I don't do anything.
Well, I think we're a little older now, but when I'm thinking about these friend holidays, I was definitely thinking about like in the 20s and 30s. Um,
Oh, we used to have, remember, we would
we
have
had
our
that big
Halloween
party
parties. Yeah,
and people
yeah.
dressed up in costume.
Yeah, that's right.
What was
And
at
then
our
we went to
apartment?
another party. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
And I mean, when I worked at a call center, we dressed up in the call center. Like nobody could
Yeah.
see you, so being dressed up for Halloween was just fun, you know? Like, definitely it's definitely more the party culture aspect of it, but
Mm, mm,
it was definitely a thing. I'm trying to
yeah.
think of like, when you go through the holidays, so Martin Luther King, Valentine's Day. I'm just thinking of federal. I mean, Memorial Day, I don't I'm an army
That's
brat.
food. Also food. You barbecue. Labor Day and Memorial Day
And 4th of July,
and 4th of July. See, food. I'm telling you.
except Memorial Day, when I was on the military bases, had a solemnity to it,
Yes, yes, yes.
just the
That's
way
true.
Veterans Day does. Veterans Day
Yes.
doesn't have food,
Same.
but off of the military base, I found it was more about the barbecues or people taking vacation. In New York, it was literally the start of summer.
Yeah.
Summer started Memorial Day
That's
and ended Labor
my impression is that those 2 bookend summer, right?
Yeah,
So,
they do.
yeah.
That's why the whole, "You don't wear white after Labor Day." Yes, you do. It's called winter white. But, like, I don't same thing with Labor Day, doesn't have food associated with it really. I
Well,
mean,
you
there could
barbecue,
be
though.
barbecue, but the original purpose of the holiday, I feel like isn't really acknowledged.
Yeah, I think that's probably true with a name like Labor Day.
Yeah. Well, it's because we didn't wanna do May Day as Labor Day, which most of the rest of the
Now,
world
May
does.
Day is interesting because it is has kind of 2 things going on. There's got the labor worker rights,
Mhm.
but then it's also got that kind of Maypole spring situation
Beltane.
going on.
Yeah.
Is that Beltane?
I would have to look up what the real date, but I think
Mm,
it's similar.
I don't know. I've heard of Beltane. I don't know what it is. So May Day is kind of funny.
Mhm. It is, but I'm just saying that w we, the United States, like to be iconoclastic, different. And so the rest of the world was celebrating workers' rights on May 1st, and we were like, "No, we'll do it the 1st Monday in September."
Oh, must be a reason for that, though.
I don't think they wanted the workers of the world to unite. Do you really
I
think our
wonder if there
Robert
was a
Byrne
reason for that.
a reason? I would say the
September.
capitalist, that little guy from
Okay.
Monopoly,
Maybe there's
definitely
another
had a reason.
reason. I'm just another reason.
We'll see, Imma see. Labor Day is in September instead of May 1st in the US, mainly because American leaders in the 1800s wanted a workers' holiday separate from the more radical socialist associated May Day tradition. And
Oh,
because
you're
they said,
right.
uh-huh. Hey, I've learned some of my socialist history. Socialist, and because a September date was already being used by US unions. So that's the other aspect. I did not know the unions were doing that.
I was wondering if there was more to it. So okay.
So
Okay.
the New York Central Labor Union organized a large workers' parade on September 5th, 1882, which became an annual
Oh,
September tradition. The Knights
no.
of Labor soon adopted a resolution that the first Monday in September should be Labor Day, and the idea spread to many states in the 1800s. Unions liked early September because the weather was good and it fell roughly midway between the 4th of July and Thanksgiving.
Oh, I see. It's a little bit random, but
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
May 1st,
whatever.
well, when you're looking to add more holidays, like right now, we don't have an official holiday in March
Mm,
or April.
yeah.
And then one
Oh,
in
yeah.
May is
That's
at the
true.
end of the month.
We
So
should
there's,
have one in April because it's tax due date,
right?
so we all need to drink after that. God.
May 1st was taken up internationally as International Workers' Day to commemorate the 1886, Haymarket Affair in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Another reason the US did not want to mark the date, which involved radical labor elements and violence between police and demonstrators. US
Mm.
politicians, wary of socialism, anarchism, and the memory of riots, did not want the official American workers' holiday tied to that date or its
Mm.
politics.
I see.
To appease the labor to appease labor after the violent Pullman strike, President Grover Cleveland signed a law on June 28, 1894, making the first Monday in September a national holiday, deliberately choosing the existing September tradition over the May 1st one. So you are right too that there were other reasons that it wasn't just.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. My socialist perspective was very much the man didn't want it. But there's more to it than that.
Yes, yes,
The workers
yeah,
had some say in this. They've been
yeah,
commemorating it. I like that. I like learning that there's
yeah.
more to the story and that the workers were actually the ones to start the September tradition.
Mm, yeah.
So did we go through all of them? We got Memorial, 4th of July. I'm just thinking of the federal holidays. Labor Day, Veterans Day, which I also call them bank holidays. One of the reasons I remember all of these is I started working at a bank. And so I would have days off
Um,
that people working in retail or at restaurants didn't
yeah,
have off. So, like, when
right,
I
right.
mention things like Columbus
Yeah,
Day and Veterans Day, people look at me like I have 3 heads because they never had those days off. They're like,
yeah.
"That's a holiday?" I'm like, "It's a federal holiday. It's a bank holiday." Oh, and do you know, I think this is still in the books, banks after the 1929 crash cannot be closed 4 days in a row, which is why,
Oh,
though Thanksgiving is a holiday, the day after Thanksgiving is not.
oh,
People can take it as a PTO day, but it is not an official holiday because that would mean a bank would be closed for 4 days in a row.
oh,
They cannot be
interesting.
closed for 4 days in a row.
Mm,
And then we have, is Christmas our only religious holiday, technically? I think it is.
I think so.
And then New Year's. I actually must say that I do really enjoy the if you wanna know holidays, especially both religious and otherwise, take a look at the New York City public school systems and the days that they have off. Because this past year, I think last year was the first year, I think it was the first year, they actually had Holi off. No, not Holi, Diwali. Diwali off in November.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
But a few years before that, I don't know how many, but it's been a while, they also have a holiday for Lunar New Year. I think
Hmm.
I don't know if this year is the first year or if it's been a while, but they have Eid off now.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And I just really love the fact that this multicultural city recognizes the fact that their students come from different backgrounds and
Yeah,
have
yeah.
days
And
off.
they acknowledge and respect
And I
other
believe there's days off
days.
for Yom Kippur as well.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that's nice.
yeah, I like that.
So
Though,
do the kids ever go to school?
yes. In fact, they start um, normally after Labor Day and
Mm.
they go through the end of June. So they get
Oh,
July
okay.
and
Yeah,
August off,
yeah.
but they don't, like, there are parts of this country that kids are out of school beginning of June, end of May.
I used to have 3 months off when I was growing up.
Well, they have the same, I believe, number of days off. It's just spread out because they
Mm.
do honor so many other holidays.
Yeah.
Um, and they normally have stuff in there for, like, snow days. Though
Oh, right.
nowadays with we're gonna revert to, I don't know if you saw this, but some of the kids had called Mondami out and said, "We want a real snow day." And so he actually called one of the kids and said, "Okay, it's gonna be a real snow day. It's not school online, it's a real snow day." And so he actually called it.
Oh, I see.
He called it a real snow day the last time they had a snowstorm.
You mean they have to study through the computer?
Since COVID,
Oh, that's the worst.
it gets
Ugh.
switched to. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And the thing about it is that, like, I mean, I just think about I mean, they're trying to make it better, but parents who don't have childcare, people who don't have internet access, like, during COVID, they had to find a way to make sure people got it, but if you have people who had kids since then and they're not set up for it, we like to think that everybody has
Yeah,
access nowadays, and in a big city, it is more likely to be the case, but it's still a utility you have to pay for, and if
yep,
you're just trying to pay for
yeah,
rent and food in an expensive city and having to commute in because you probably can't live near where you work, seems hard,
yeah, yeah.
especially since for a long time there, they were cutting resources to the libraries because the libraries would be another place, like your local library,
Mm,
if you don't travel far,
yeah,
but local
yeah.
libraries would be a place. I know that during COVID, one of the things that, um, is they left the internet on at the libraries in, like, rural places in New York and even here in Connecticut where I'm at, and people would drive to the parking lot and
Oh,
use
right.
because not
Yes, yeah.
everybody,
Yep,
like, had access at home.
yeah. Hmm.
So but I loved how happy it was a young woman, a girl. She was like, "Yay!"
Good
when
for
Mondami called
her.
her. Right? I thought it
Yeah,
was great.
I like that.
And I like a mayor who's responsive to his constituents, who
Yes,
understands
yeah.
that that girl who, I don't know if she was 10 or 12 or whatever, in a few years, she's gonna be voting.
That's true.
Sh she's gonna remember who did and did not actually listen to students.
True.
And as any good marketer will tell you, if you get them young, you have a much greater opportunity to hold on to them
Mm,
than if you're trying to convert them when they're older,
smart.
right?
Yep, very smart.
Hey, it's even when, they don't get into it this much, but, the brainwashing of my dad is, like a documentary film, you can find it on YouTube, but it speaks to the plans that the Republic, especially the right-wing arm of the Republican Party, put in place after the Civil Rights Act was passed and,
Mm,
Medicare legislation and all of that to swing the window away from these socialist policies that were chipping
uh,
away at their power
right.
back the other way.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Why am I so, like, gloomy today?
I don't know, you're kind of, like, deep and dark.
Right? I'm like, "What is
Yeah,
going on?" I don't
maybe it's the weather.
maybe. We do have a storm. I'm
Yes,
very
we have a
sensitive,
storm.
very sensitive. Though it's not
Yeah.
here yet. It's just gray here right now.
Oh, we're raining down here.
Yeah, well, I don't even have rain. Like, I have gray and some occasional wind. Like, it's not windy right now,
Mm,
but it was windy earlier. The moon's in Aquarius.
does that mean
I don't know,
anything?
it's definitely, I always think of Aquarius as, like, looking at the whole picture, looking at the future kind of thing. Um, we have a lot of stuff in Pisces. Maybe I'm tapping into the world.
Aren't we a new moon soon? Does that have something?
Yeah, it'll be a new moon in Aries. This is all tropical zodiac, by the way. Let's see, new moon should not be this hard, BG. New moon will be on the 18th. Yes, we are like today is the 16th? We are
16th,
t
yeah,
yeah.
almost.
It's actually in Pisces. It's actually
Oh,
in
maybe
Pisces.
that's why you're, like, watery.
Well, there's a lot in Pisces right now. We have the moon, we have Mars, we have Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and it's the last
Oh
week of this
god.
Mercury
Yep,
retrograde, which is, I
see?
think, the other thing that's just like dragging me back and
Yeah.
dragging me back.
Into the
Um,
depths.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Mercury, Moon, Sun, the Sun, Mercury, Moon, some I think Saturn. I think
Oh,
Saturn might be in Pisces.
also
I can tell you.
another
I can tell you. But there's like 4
dark.
planets that are hanging out here that and Pisces is just bringing me to the depths. I'm like, "What the hell?" So the
Yeah.
Sun, ooh, the North Node, Mercury, Mars, that's what it was. Mars is in Pisces, not Saturn. Yours.
Um, what does that
And
mean?
Mars is motivation, it's movement forward, it's what drives you. Pisces, Mars uh, is normally not as comfortable in the water signs, but it would be
Mm,
moved forward by, like, intuition, ancestors, past lives. Pisces is that connection to the beyond the veil.
mm,
It has a so there's a no, people talk about, like, Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and, like, All Saints' Day and stuff like that. That's interesting to me because that's a Scorpio time, which would be
mm,
another sort of connection, but it's a more active connection between the veil. With Pisces, it's like a permeation. It's like water permeating. It's like it just gets in.
mhm, mhm,
It's not an
mhm.
active crossing. It is like if you're at all open in any way, it's there. And I think that's maybe what's happening. I also have a natal Mars sign in water. Yeah, I hadn't actually looked at what was impacting me, but I'm definitely feeling it.
Mm.
And I didn't notice until I started talking, and every time I tried to talk about something fun, I ended up talking about something not fun. So,
Yes, you wanted to keep us,
grounded in the realities of our
like,
current existence.
but I mean,
Right?
it's good to be
It is.
cognizant. Yes, yes,
But I'm gonna
for
celebrate
sure.
learn that the unions have as much to do with Labor Day in
Yeah,
September.
that seems to have perked you up quite a bit.
That perked me up. I like knowing that the unions are the reasons. I mean, we currently have a 40-day work week. I'd like us to have a
Less.
well, they say those of us over 40 shouldn't be working more than 30 hours a week.
I agree with that.
Mhm. And I think even those over 40 should maybe be working like 32,
Didn't France
36.
implement something?
Yes,
I
France
feel
has a
like,
36-hour work week, I think.
yeah,
No, 30, maybe it's 32.
definitely less than 40.
I know it's less than 40 because my friend who moved from and this they've had it for a long time, because my friend who was moving on 9/11, 2001, back to France was working for an American company, and that American company actually had to compensate her because she was still required under their auspices to work 40 hours.
Oh.
They had to give her extra time off, so, like, that she could take as vacation or,
Oh,
like, comp
right.
time
Yeah.
because she worked that extra 8 hours a week. So I know
Mm.
that they've had it, and they've had it for a long time. I think, like I said, there's ways that companies can, I guess, get around it, but their laws are less hours. And I think some of that was so that more people could be employed.
Oh, I see.
But they have something more similar to universal health care. Like, one of the reasons
Yes.
in the US they don't necessarily wanna employ more people is there's a requirement that people that you employ full time or 30 hours or more a week, you have to cover their health insurance.
Mm.
And that adds a whole 'nother cost. So that's why so many companies hire people and keep it just below full time, which is why you have so many Americans working. I'm doing it again.
So we had talked before, I feel, about this topic. and I feel like I had looked up Dubai. Dubai was they were trying out less
The UK
days
did
of the
too.
week. Yeah,
The UK just tried a 32 not all of them. There was a concerted study done where they were doing, I believe it was 32-hour work week, and they found it so successful and so productive that those that tried it were keeping it.
yeah. People were I think they UAE and it was like a part of UAE were trying it and they were still collecting data on it, but evidently they perform better, the
Yeah.
employees. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was found to be, I know that there was a study released 2024, I think, um, done in the UK on a 32-hour work week. And those
Mm.
companies that had done it were keeping it. People were more productive, people were happier, people didn't wanna leave, because why would you wanna leave for another company that's gonna make you work more? So
Yep.
they saved money on, like, turnover,
Mm. Mhm,
like,
mhm.
all these things that those in power do to try and save money, I think ultimately will end up costing them more. Um, my woman Emma Nix, I really love her. Um, she talked about some studies that talked about the way, like, the whole matriarchy and uplifting of society and looking at it as a whole, um, and that in those societies, it wasn't that men didn't have a role, it's that their role was different and it wasn't leadership. Because in leadership, they were meant to look at like a straight line from here to there, while women were looking at the whole. And so they found that when women were making the decisions, it was better. And men had a role of protection. They had a role of active work, of starting things, but at the direction of women in these old societies.
How did she know that? There's no written evidence.
This is, I could be conflating two things. So I'm going to see if I can find and send for our auspices
All
what
right.
Eminence said, because I could be conflating something that she had put out there with something else.
Mm.
Pisces. I'm just getting the download. I'll try and find it later because it's gonna be like me just looking on my phone.
Well, maybe you should do your summary. Maybe that will perk you up.
Yes.
You're always
So
very good at that.
we shall do a mini summary so you know what today has been about. If you've listened this long, um, we started talking about holidays, and we really looked at
Yes.
how they've morphed over time, how different countries might have different expressions of the same holiday, and how as culture changes, so do the way we perceive holidays. We also got to see how even growing up in a country, you don't always know the history of how a
Mhm.
holiday came into being or why it exists. Um, and so, like, we got to hear about Labor Day in the US, which doesn't follow the rest of the world, which has a May Day as their Labor Day, but it did come out of traditions with unions in the United States, who picked a day between the 4th of July, which commemorates the founding of the country, and Thanksgiving, which commemorates what at the time was deemed the start of um, what became the United States. I have other terms, but I'm trying not to go back down my
Okay.
negative
Let's
line.
not go back down.
Yes. So, and Katie definitely brought us some sweet, sweet knowledge about Japan and the way that Valentine's Day morphed there to the point where
Mhm.
it's definitely coming into the self-care, the self-love space,
Mhm. Yep.
and the friend space.
Yep.
So now, but that's not where it started. So I hope you will enjoy this, or you have enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.